in 1967-68, when I first teleported from the teleport at the old Curtiss-Wright Aeronautical Company facility at 1 Passaic Avenue in Woodridge, New Jersey. We jumped through a Tesla device there, and then popped back, traveled through a Vortal tunnel in the time-space continuum, and then popped into view at the old, near the old state capitol building in the state capitol complex in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That was being used as sort of a collection area for teleportees into New Mexico during this whole era. For me, between the first time I teleported there in 1967-68 time frame, and then ultimately the summer of 1972, about 5 years later. We went over to the Los Alamos National Labs, and my dad presented the prospectus to involve civilians, including American school children, in teleportation experiments to Dr. Agnew when he was the director of the W Division, the weapons division of the lab. And that's the true history, unfortunately, of U.S. time travel technical development. Time travel was sequestered within the military-industrial intelligence complex at its inception as a result of Tesla's papers being forwarded to Los Alamos. And that's one of the reasons I'm speaking out, is because, for example, the great benefit, the life advantaging benefit that teleportation could be to humanity as perhaps a civilian transportation modality that would replace, for example, long-distance air travel, has not emerged in the public realm because it was made secret in 1943. And so we met with Agnew. He was the federal science administrator. In that meeting, he was reviewing the prospectus that my dad had drafted and doing things like scrutinizing the budget for the project. I know that meeting occurred between 1967 and 68 because during that meeting he asked my father how old I was, and my father and I answered simultaneously 6. And because I was born in September of 1961, that meeting hence had to have occurred between September of 1967 and 68. There was also a very fascinating discussion between my father and Dr. Agnew at that meeting, in which he said, "How was your trip, to New Mexico from the East Coast?" And my dad said, "Fast." He said, "Fine and fast." And Dr. Agnew looked up from the prospectus with a sort of an insider's grin on his face and said, "Oh, did you take the teleport?" And my dad said, "Yes, and so did my number 3 son, Andy." And then my dad paused for a few seconds and then said to Dr. Agnew, "Have you tried it yet?" And Dr. Agnew said, "No, but I want to." And to me, I think we can infer that seems to suggest that teleportation as a practical capability had then only recently emerged in the defense technical community, because clearly a scientist, indeed a Manhattan Project scientist as connected as Dr. Agnew, would have already tried it if it had emerged much earlier than then. So what do I mean when I say Dr. Agnew was so well connected? Well, he was the only human being who was a participant in all 3 critical stages of the Manhattan Project. He was an assistant to Enrico Fermi. There's the Fermi connection again. At CP1, which is when the atomic pile went critical, at the squash courts at the University of Chicago, where Agnew was Dr. Fermi's prized pupil, prized protege in physics at the University of Chicago. Agnew was also present at Los Alamos and Alamogordo when the atomic bomb was manufactured and tested. And then he was also present in the Great Artiste, which was the chase plane that followed the Enola Gay at the time that it dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And so he had a significant role in the Manhattan Project. But here, 25 years after the dropping of the atomic bomb, my father and I meet him, and it's all about teleportation, chronovision, and other secret technologies that would allow the U.S. intelligence community to gather information from distant events in the past and the future, which would give it really an unprecedented strategic advantage vis-a-vis the 2 forces in the universe that they were concerned about, namely the grays and the reds, which is to say whoever the extraterrestrials were and what they intended, because they knew we were being visited by different extraterrestrial civilizations, and also the former Soviet Union. They were concerned about a Soviet push for world dominance that might even include a land invasion of the lower 48 of the United States. So Dr. Agnew was one of the principals on Project Pegasus. He had this conspicuous connection to Fermi, and Fermi's fingerprints, hence, are on both the chronovisor capability as the mentor of Ernetti and Gemelli and the derivation of the chronovisors, and he also has a linkage to Agnew and the derivation of teleportation and its reduction to practice because he was essentially Harold Agnew's mentor in nuclear physics. I met several other of the Manhattan Project physicists during my service. One, of course, was Dr. Edward Teller, who was present trying to fix one of the chronovisor arrays during one of the summers that I was in New Mexico on the project. And I also was present standing next to my dad in the hallway at the Los Alamos National Labs when he informed the atomic physicist, Dr. Emilio Segre, who was also attached to the Manhattan Project, that we were there at Los Alamos and Sandia on a teleportation project. And Dr. Segre was quite gracious and said that it was fascinating to learn that such a classified research project was underway, and asked my father to keep him apprised of what was accomplished in Project Pegasus. So it's critical for your listeners to know that time travel not only emerged by 1967-68 and was kept secret 40 years ago, but the complication historically is that it was deeply embedded in the weapons division of the atomic labs in New Mexico. And that's the reason why all of these different cover stories about time travel have been propagated over the years as disinformational ploys to conceal Project Pegasus and this quantum access capability and really confuse the world public about this subject and really prevent these secrets from escaping the defense labs. But unfortunately, the cat is now out of the bag. Schrodinger's cat is now out of the bag because I am not going to give up and I'm not going to give in. I'm going to continue to lecture and speak and reveal what I know about Project Pegasus because I believe that this teleportation capability that was derived 40 years ago may not just be beneficial, but may be necessary for our planetary survival. So I'm speaking out now, and I will continue to do so. But that's really the historical context in which U.S. time travel emerged. It was really the hidden stepchild of the Manhattan Project.